ahead and launch us, guys. So welcome everyone to tonight's MCSS webinar, Back to School with the Levin Center. Fun story, Lauren and I have been trying to get this particular one going since last March, and it's been a comedy of wonderful errors, but I feel like Lauren and I are now besties because we've moved through so much getting this together. So we're really glad to have you guys tonight. I'm your host, but I won't be doing much talking. I'm Dave Johnson. I am the past president, no longer president of Michigan Council for the Social Studies. I'm also the chair of the Online Learning Committee. And I'll do a little bit more by way of welcome in just a second, but I first want to go over the ground rules for tonight and give a couple of quick announcements. First of all, sketches. If you are attending this and would like sketches, watch your email because after this is over, we will be sending you a form that you can fill out to get those sketches. And you'll have about a week. I'll send it out when the video recap is up, which should be, if not tomorrow, then a little bit later in the week. But be on the lookout for that. And because you are here live, you are eligible for those sketches. And then MCSS as an organization puts on both one-off webinars like this one, as well as sometimes some series on specialized topics every year. So while this is the only one we currently have scheduled, we recommend that you follow our website for more information on future offerings as they become available. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that we've got a spring conference coming up this year that takes place at Grand Valley's downtown Eberhard Center. April 25th through 26th, 2025. Registration is open now, and you won't want to miss the incredible conference with an incredible soon-to-be-announced list of speakers. We don't have our top billed one signed on the dotted line yet, but if we get the one we're looking for, you're not going to want to miss this conference. So I'll just put that little spoiler plug in there for you. And then you're all teachers doing great things in your classroom, so we recommend that you put a proposal in to present at this year's conference. And that presenter window opens up soon and will run through very early December. And then finally, we offer a lot of great programming like this webinar series for free, regardless of whether you're a member or not. But there's a lot of really cool benefits to being an MCSS member. You get a discounted rate to the MCSS conference, and then there's some member-specific publications that come out every year. So the $40 a year that you could spend as a member go a long way towards advancing social studies education across the state. And if you're already a member, consider renewing early and locking things in for another year. And if you're not a member yet, there's no better time than the present. So let's stop listening to me and let me introduce our two awesome speakers today. We've got Lauren Jasinski and Mark Morrow from the civic education specialists at the Levin Center for Oversight and Democracy at Wayne State University Law School. Their program, Learning by Hearings, has partnered with the Michigan Department of Ed and the state of Michigan to offer free classroom resources to high school teachers. Lauren is a certified social studies teacher and has 10 years of classroom experience teaching U.S. history, world history, U.S. civics, and AP comparative government and politics. That is a mouthful, Lauren, at the secondary level. And she's worked to develop curriculum at the local and county levels and is trained in the inquiry design model and implementation of the C3 framework. Lauren lives in a historic home built in 1920, which I find absolutely awesome as a historic homeowner myself. And we'll put a tip jar in the chat later on because historic home is code for needs a new roof. So just look for that. And then Mark, she's presenting with tonight. Mark is a certified social studies teacher and has 7 years of classroom experience teaching U.S. history, world history at the secondary level. He's participated in several trainings through the Michigan Center for Civic Education. He even coached a Michigan Youth in Government delegation at the secondary level. That is awesome. And if he's not cool enough, if those things weren't cool enough for you, he also sings in a barbershop quartet at the Greenfield Village, which may make him one of the most multi-talented presenters we've had on the webinar series through MCSS since we started doing this. So with that, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to turn things over to Lauren and Mark. So take it away, gang.
Like Dave was saying, and thank you very much, Dave, my name is Mark Morrow. I'm one of the civic education specialists at the Levin Center. I'm here with my colleague, Lauren Jasinski, who is also one of the civic education civic education specialists. And then also Christopher Hunter is here with us. He's our civic education outreach coordinator. Um, he's not going to say a whole lot. He's his kids are in the background, is what he's told us. But if you have any sort of follow-up or any questions as a result of this presentation, he is going to be your contact point person. Before I throw it over to Lauren to the next slide, I just want to give people a moment to take a look at the link tree right here, scan that QR code, save it for later, take a picture of it. That's a link to all of our resources, things like that. Okay. So what we're going to be doing here tonight is we're going to tell you a little bit about the Levin Center, about us, what we do, how we started, and then we're going to give you an overview of some of the lesson plans, student materials, scenarios that we have up and coming that are in the works that are already available. And then Lauren is going to give you a more in-depth look into some of one of the classroom resources that we have specifically for civics educators. And then we're going to follow it up with an opportunity for some questions, comments, concerns, along with some exciting professional development opportunities that we have coming up, both hosted by us and as well as our partners. So real quick to start things off, just sort of on a light and fluffy note, if I could have people go into the chat and just share where you teach and something you're looking forward to look to this coming semester. So we'll just take a moment and take a look at that. Oh, wonderful. Looking forward to work with Dimension 3 of C3 this fall. Fantastic. We have a professional opportunity for you. So wonderful. Onaway High School, fantastic. Terrified of teaching the 2024 election. I can understand why that might be. Also looking forward to teaching the 2024 election. I can understand why that might be too. Oh, we have an assistant professor here with us. Welcome, Amy. Thank you very much for being here, teaching elementary social studies methods classes. That's fantastic. Always on the hunt for strategies. Wonderful. We hope to provide some of those here tonight. That's very important to us. That, when we give presentations like this, there's something for everybody to walk away from, being able to implement in their rooms. Ellen, welcome from the MCCE. Fantastic. Love having you here. Also has children in the background. Fantastic. You and Christopher can, commiserate. Okay. Well, I think we're going to get things moving along a little bit. And so I'm going to move it over to my colleague, Lauren, to tell you a little bit more about what it is we do and, how we came to be.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. So again, we're so excited to be here with all of you. And Dave, thank you for this great opportunity to share some of what we've been up to and to really kick off our school year and get to know some new people across the state. So like Mark and Dave both said, my name is Lauren Jasinski. I was a former classroom teacher before I moved into this position at the Levin Center. And we want to kind of break down what it is we do at the Levin Center kind of through a couple different tiers. So normally if we were all in person together, right, I'd ask you if you had ever been to Detroit and visited Wayne State University. And then I'd also ask you if you've ever heard of Senator Carl Levin or remember him or have seen his little bespectacled face, across your TVs or across the news sometime in the last 4 decades over his career of service to us here in Michigan. Senator Levin founded the Carl Levin Center for Oversight and Democracy. We're housed here at Wayne Law, based in Detroit, Michigan. But before we kind of dive into a lot of the work that we do at the center and what we have to offer, I want to invite everybody to take a look at this quote, because this is really something that we ground all of our work in, right? It says, it's the proper duty of a representative body to look diligently into every affair of government and to talk much about what it sees. It is meant to be the eyes and the voice and to embody the wisdom and will of its constituents. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this concept of oversight that we're going to talk about throughout tonight's webinar is that it's not a phrase or a concept that's actually even found in our Constitution. It's not one of the enumerated powers. However, it is something that our Congress has performed from very, very early on and has a lot of historic precedents for why good oversight helps our Congress conduct the government in a good and efficient way, right? That good oversight creates good good government. That was something that Carl Levin used to always say. And one thing that you'll notice too, if you can see the little citation below this quote, Mark and I were just talking about it before we jumped on this call. This is what we mean when we talk about precedents, right? That this quote is pulled from a relatively recent Supreme Court hearing, but in that hearing, they were citing a previous Supreme Court hearing that had occurred nearly 100 years before that, which was then also citing an article that had been published several decades before that. So when we talk about historic precedents for this concept, this is really what we're talking about, right? This concept that Congress has to be the eyes and the voice of the people, otherwise they're not doing their job. And us as everyday citizens have to hold our elected officials accountable. Otherwise they might be able to run rampant with their power. So, Mark, next part. So what is it that we do here at the center? Like I said, about 10 years ago, Carl Levin retired from office and moved back to his home here in Detroit and taught at Wayne Law. Carl Levin was Michigan's longest serving senator after nearly 36 years of service to us in the Senate, after a much longer lifetime of service here to the city of Detroit in the state of Michigan. He founded the center because he wasn't done contributing to this concept of fact-based bipartisan oversight that he had really built on during his career in the Senate. That even though he was retired from office, he wanted to encourage people who were still in Congress and their staff members to be able to conduct these investigations. A lot of times in civics, we talk so much about the job of Congress being getting elected, right? We talk about that kind of as a bookend. And then we talk about how a bill becomes a law, and we play the cute Schoolhouse Rock video, and then that kind of ends our conversation about what Congress does. We feel really strongly at our center that this concept of oversight, and by studying oversight and congressional investigations, we can really dive so much further into all of the work that Congress does to do its job well. So we've continued this legacy of Senator Levin. We continue to do these trainings in DC for Congress to help legislators and their offices conduct oversight and do investigations better. We've also really expanded, though. We now do this work at the state level with state legislatures. We have staff members who travel around the whole country and run workshops and do trainings for people at the state level who want to conduct investigations. We also do a lot of research and academic work and honor scholars who want to incorporate this idea of oversight into their academic work on good governance. And we also hold some informational panels. One of the things, though, that we kind of identified over the last couple of years is that it's great for us to encourage Congress and lawmakers to do their job better. But if we as everyday citizens don't know that this is part of their job, we can't ask them to do it, right? And so this part of educating the public, educating everyday voters about oversight as a concept and why it's important to us is something that we really value and hold dear. So how does all of this relate to high school education? Well, we know we're really at a crossroads in civic education, right? That if you are in the classroom, like Kim said so nicely, right? I am equal parts very, very excited and terrified about teaching this upcoming election. And I think that we can all feel that about a lot of things that are in front of us in a civics classroom right now, and really any social studies classroom, right, in a much larger way. I'm sure all of you have read and acknowledged and have had conversations about that NAEP report card that came out about a year and a half ago, saying that nobody learns civics anymore and that we're not advancing our understanding of civics with young people. We've seen grades or we've seen scores and our state testing kind of stagnate over the last couple of years. We know that young people are hungry for a more thorough and more experiential understanding of their role in our democracy, but it's really difficult to deliver that. And we feel strongly that some of the resources that we're going to present you with and some of the things that we have in the works are going to give you a way to address some of those concerns. So how did we end up doing what we do at the congressional level and now also creating education resources? Well, we partnered with a wonderful organization who we see some of our partners here, hey Mary, on the call right now. We partnered with a wonderful organization called Youth in Government Michigan. If you're not familiar with this, Youth in Government is a mock legislative experience where students train as a team and then go to regional and then eventually state experiences where they run for governor, perform legislative duties, even get a little bit of exposure to some judicial roles. And so we partnered with the YMCA and the Youth in Government program to offer a mock legislative hearing, an oversight hearing inside of this program, where students were pulled out of the legislative work they were already doing, given like a scandal of some kind, and asked to get to the bottom of it and find some facts. We were really, really proud of that program, and we saw a lot of success. Student feedback was excellent, which we'll talk about in just a second. However, it was only reaching a handful of students every year, and we know that that's not the best way for us to get some of these ideas out there. It's not an equitable way for us to get our ideas out there. So we were lucky enough to partner with the state of Michigan and the Michigan Department of Education for some funding to secure this program's growth over the next couple years. And Mark and I are now hard at work at building up content resources, things that are aligned with our current state standards, as well as aligned with the C3 framework, so that you're not doing extra things on top of what is already on your plates, but that we really want to problem solve with you and offer you resources that fit into the classes that you're already taking.
So, to talk a little bit more about that youth and government experience and sort of the genesis of the things that we're doing today, I just wanted to share a little bit about how it runs. So for this experience, students receive a scenario. They also receive witness backgrounds. And these are students who have never met one another. I should point this out. They arrive at the conference and then they work together to develop questions based on the scenario and the witness backgrounds they're given. The next day, so they take an evening, they go over things. The next day, they come back and they hold two 90-minute hearings to questions with witnesses. Students take notes, they do follow-up, they work together to gain information. And the witnesses, and again, this is at the youth and government level, the witnesses are played by willing, able, and eager adult volunteers who are given witness background to guide their testimony for the students. Following that, although youth in government, it's not a classroom, we don't necessarily need some form of assessment. We do feel assessment's important and it's valuable, and students are given a performative assessment opportunity where they have a debrief session, and then they create a press release together collaboratively and hold a press conference. The press then gets an opportunity to ask questions about the hearing and the outcomes, and students are allowed to include legislative suggestions for the future, sort of wrapping things up in a nice little bow. To Lauren's point, students love this. This is just a little bit of the feedback that we've gotten from students over the past few years. And as you can see in the chat, Mary Burleson, who runs Michigan Youth in Government, can back us up on this. Students love it. One of my favorite quotes down here is, "There may always be more to a story than what it seems, and this activity showed me that I can find out." I like to say that not every student is going to succeed at every task, but every student can think. And that quote right there, that the activity showed them that they are capable and that they can find out, that's huge. And that is monumental. And so I'm going to throw it back over to my colleague Lauren to tell you how we decided to take this experience and try and bring it into the classroom so more students can feel that kind of success.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. So we want to actually show you how we've adapted this concept of the hearing that we've used in youth and government on a very small scale to an actual classroom activity that you can use with your classes. We think that there are a ton of opportunities for differentiation, for changing this up to fit the size of your classes and all sorts of things like that. But the way that we really envision this simulation is to be kind of a skeleton of how the hearing would run and the kinds of things that you would need to do in your classroom to set up and conduct a hearing, as well as a library of scenarios that you can pick and choose from to fit the needs of your classroom. So if you have a group of students that's maybe more interested in a particular topic, if there's something happening in your community that might be a little bit better aligned to one simulation over another, you have that freedom as a teacher to also pick the scenario based on, one, what you're more comfortable addressing with your students, and two, what might be more timely to fit into your classroom. So if you want to scan that QR code, or I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat right now to this Google Drive, you can see the lesson plan as well as all of the student material that you would be giving to a class, both to prepare for and then conduct the research for this activity. But as we go, I'm going to walk you through basically the 4 steps that that this activity is broken down into. We know that all of your classes are such probably crazy amounts of time, such different schedules, block hours and skinnies and all sorts of rotating things. So we don't claim for this to necessarily be 4 days, but it is broken down into like four kind of parts of this activity. So the very first thing that you would do is introduce your students to this scandal. You would tell them that they are a group of either concerned citizens or legislators, and that there's been this problem in their community. There's 2 major kinds of oversight, and we sometimes refer to it as kind of reactive and proactive. Proactive oversight is the sorts of things that our legislators do on a day-to-day basis, where if there is a bill in front of them, they have to ask their staff to get them some data, ask what their constituents feel about it, look to past votes, right, to know how they're going to cast their vote on something. And on the other side of that, we see reactive oversight as well, that our legislators are faced with some kind of a scandal or a problem, or something hits the news that should be of concern to them, or that there is maybe an issue in their community that's brought to light by a constituent that they really need to get to the bottom of. And this simulation is meant to recreate that second option, that there is some kind of problem. Our students role play either a legislator or a witness to bring these ideas to light, and then they together have to settle on what those facts are at the end. So this whole activity is started with students seeing what this scandal is. They're given a small part of a news story. We have these kind of artificial news stories that we make up. Our newspaper is called the Daily Spectacle, kind of a tribute to Senator Levin's Little Spectacles. But we've created these scenarios that are sort of composite and believable and contemporary, but not necessarily a real thing that has happened in Michigan. We want to be careful to not put any like community on blast. We don't want to draw negative opinions to any part of our state, or mislead students about some decisions that have made in the past. So oftentimes they're sort of a, like we said, composite of some things that have happened across our state that would be relevant. The situation in particular that you have in front of you is the situation where a company called UChem Innovations had a facility in a really busy, relatively urban area. And that facility was closed and fell behind on its inspections. And when community members started saying, hey, there's weird stuff happening in my yard, there's weird smells, our ground seems to be contaminated, there's something going on with that facility, they didn't have anyone to turn to, right? And so this investigation is coming up with answers for these community members and figuring out where the ball was dropped along the line to allow this company to kind of get into this situation. The next part of this simulation is where students will actually decide who to call as witnesses. So they will be given 8 different summaries of potential people that they could talk to. They could be state departments or agencies. They could be community members that are experiencing the problem. They could be other legislators that have maybe made decisions about this thing in the past. And they could be experts of different kind that they could lend some lend some insight into the problem that is existing for these people. In the example that you have in front of you in this UChem scenario, you've got experts from the Attorney General's office, you have experts from EGLE, our Department of Energy, Great Lakes and the Environment. You also have some civic organizations called like the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, and you also have the CEO of this company, right? So students would get to talk with each other and then vote on which of these 6 people they actually think they could get the most information from. And then you would divide up your class into several different working groups. You'd have several working groups that are going to be the legislators during the investigation, and then you had several groups that would be the teams that are going to be the witnesses during the investigation. And then they're given time to prepare and research their roles. The third part is this actual hearing. And so when the students are ready, the legislators will then prepare some questions and call these witnesses in one by one and ask them what they know about the situation. They'll try and establish a timeline of facts. They will try and get to the bottom of who knew things when, and get all those questions that they came up with at the very beginning answered. Students are given about 10 minutes to question each witness. So you can divide that up into like several different groupings or several different days. Everyone who's not playing a witness or a legislator during that experience becomes a member of the press, because the third really important aspect of an oversight hearing is how the facts that are discovered make it into public knowledge and how the public is informed about it. And so this role of the media is just as important as the other people playing a role in the hearing. And then the fourth section, the final section there, is when everybody in the class actually debriefs and a press conference is held. So those legislators have a chance to report out those facts. The media that was listening can ask for clarification. They can push back on something controversial that was said. They can really hold those legislators accountable for what they're going to do next so that problems like this don't happen in the future. And then there's a full class assessment to have students reflect on that experience. So we think this sounds really exciting. You know, you don't have to trust us or the quotes or Mary about this being really effective when students are able to actually role play and get their hands on this real life experience. But you don't have to just take our word for it, right? Mark and I, as classroom teachers, we know how frustrating it is to sit through these professional development and professional learning opportunities and be presented with something that sounds so interesting and then feel like I don't possibly have the time to do that in my classroom, right? If we take a look at just the civic standards alone, this is absolutely, experiences like this are absolutely embedded and expected of us for how we teach about these things, right? So if you take a look at just Unit 6, the very last section of our high school civics class, you can see things, you can see like the skills that we're supposed to be helping our students understand, right? How do informed members of society influence civic life? How do people bring us close? How do everyday citizens bring us closer to our core democratic values? And that very last session, or in that very last section there, right? How can we equip students with the skills and knowledge to explore multiple pathways of civic engagement through a simulation or a real world opportunity? This is exactly that, right? You are showing students that in real life, this is what our legislature does when they're faced with a problem. And this is how they come up with solutions that are going to benefit everybody so that we don't see it happen again in the future.
So, on that note, speaking of this library of civic simulations that we're sort of building at the moment and also hoping to expand on in the future, so that every time you come back to look for resources from us, there are more things to discover and try and use. We always like to get feedback from people who are in the classroom on stuff like this. So displayed on your screen is a poll everywhere. You have 2 opportunities, 2 different ways to engage, well, 3 if you count the chat. You've got pollev.com/Levin Center 916, the link which is also in the chat. Or if you want to scan the QR code that's on your screen with your smartphone and do it that way, by all means. What we'd like to do is take a couple of minutes and have you submit a few possibilities for what kinds of current event topics do your students like to talk about. This could be things that you overheard them talking about as they come into class, could be things that have been part of formal class discussions, could be things that they're talking about in the halls as they're wandering away from class, or as they're swinging through the halls when they're supposed to be in class and going to the bathroom. It could be anything. So let's take a couple of moments, if you don't mind, and pop a few responses in there. As my former mentor teacher used to say, please and thank you.
One of the things that's cool about this response feature, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything going on with TikTok and the way that it's impacting their lives. One of the things that's cool is that on both your app or if you're doing this on the web, you can, list a couple different things. You can also vote. You can upvote or downvote each other's ideas. Like if it's not something you wrote, but it's something that you thought would be interesting and that you've heard your students talk about. Well, yep, government relations, Russia, Ukraine.
And one thing too that I'm noticing here, just looking at these responses, is students are engaged with the world around them. They're not disengaged. When they're in middle school, they're in high school, they're engaged. They want to be part of the conversation. I mean, the topics that we're talking about here, Ukraine, Russia, government regulation of TikTok. I mean, these are meaty, very substantive topics that students want to discuss. Mary, I see in the chat, lack of affordable housing in tourist communities is a huge topic to teens. Yeah, once again, these are all very real concerns. These are things that adult legislators are taking up, that Congress is discussing. Students can do this sort of work if we give them the scaffolding and the support to do so. And they want to, they're hungry to do it. Mm-hmm. Gun violence in schools, unfortunately, a very important topic. The 2024 election. Scary, yes, but also an important topic. And I would like to gently point out that using an inquiry model for something like the 2024 election insulates you as a teacher a little bit when students kind of come to their own conclusions about things, right? You are not indoctrinating them. You're not pushing your view upon them. They are looking at sources. They're coming to a conclusion on their own. If that conclusion happens to be one that, you agree with, so be it. If it happens to be one you don't, also, so be it. That is the work that we do as social studies teachers.
Well, and one of the things that we're so proud of about the work that we do and the kinds of lessons that we want to have that are inspired by congressional oversight is that, for the most part, the best types of investigations that Congress has done and the most effective investigations that Congress has done have always been bipartisan, right? That people have reached across the aisle and said that this problem is bigger than both of our parties and that we need to do what's best for the people. And I don't think that that's a narrative that our students hear very often, right? That we just always talk about that we're more divided than we've ever been, and that division is insurmountable. And so giving them examples of both times in history and then moving forward, the ways that our legislators can work together to solve problems is a really, I think, great thing for us to focus on, rather than just talking about not ever being able to get on the same page or see eye to eye. Cool. These are great suggestions. We're very excited to add these to our growing list and start developing some of them. Yeah, the environment, good. So that being said, like we said, this is just one example of one of the lesson plans that we've had in the works over the last year that we are getting ready to launch at the end of this month. So on September 23rd, we want you to keep an eye on our website and on our newsletter for the release of brand new materials from us. We've got some great simulation type activities like this, where students actually role play legislators and witnesses for both contemporary and historic hearings. And then we also have sets of inquiry-based lessons that are inspired by the C3 framework that are asking students to interact with primary source documents and all of those like really important embedded skills that we know are good for our students to answer some of these big questions about like what has our Congress done when they've been faced with these problems in the past. In addition to the lesson plans that we've been creating, we also have some standalone resources that can be used either inside of other things that you're already doing or kind of as like standalone sorts of activities to enhance work that you're already doing. One of those things is called our snapshots. We have a series on our website called Portraits in History, which are research-based and really well done, well supported and well cited summaries of historic oversight hearings that have been conducted over the past, as well as some features on like individual people that have played an important role in conducting oversight. We've taken those portraits and oversight, which were originally kind of written for more academic like legislative scholars in mind, and we've boiled them down to classroom-friendly versions. So they're 2 to 4 pages. They include some embedded vocabulary for students. They come with both comprehension and discussion questions to use in class. And then there's also an audio version and a Spanish version of each of those summaries available to your classes so that you can be a little bit more flexible with how you use them. We're also really excited that on the 23rd, we're going to be launching some videos that we've been hard at work with out of a great partnership with Detroit PBS that they have like I said, partnered with us to produce these videos that are kind of short video summaries of some of these portraits as well, that they're about 10 minutes in length, and they go over and they walk students through some of these historic oversight hearings. And so we're very, very proud of that relationship and really excited to get those in your hands.
Okay, would always help if I come off mute. Now I have the opportunity to tell you about some very exciting professional learning opportunities that are coming up. So to start with, on the 26th of this month, we are partnering with actually the MCCE and My Civics to host or to be present at the Empowering Civic Educators event. That's going to be held in Pontiac. For those of you who are unaware, there is a new law in Michigan, PA 258, which requires that high school educators provide resources for fledgling voters. However, the state of Michigan passed that law. It's a wonderful law. They didn't really give any guidance or financial support as to how to go about doing that. So if you're looking for some guidance and support, that event on 9/26 is for you. On 10/24, and this is one that we are very, very excited about. Those of you who are familiar with the inquiry design model may know John Lee and Kathy Swan. They are the writers of the inquiry design model. They're also the writers behind the C3 framework, which in 2019 was adopted as part of the Michigan State Social Studies Standards. We are bringing them here to Detroit to do a live in-person event. That is for K through 12 social studies educators. Everybody on this call would be part of that group. There is also an optional asynchronous intro to the IDM session. So if you're unfamiliar with inquiry design model, or it's been a while and you want a refresher, you can do the asynchronous module ahead of time prior to the workshop and then show up on to the workshop day of, be ready to go. Like I said, we're very excited to bring them here to Detroit. Everybody on the call is welcome. The more, the merrier. Sketchies will be available for that event, the asynchronous portion as well as the in-person event. And then finally, looking into next year, March 15th is the annual My Civic Summit, 3rd annual summit. This past summit was here at Wayne Law. The next summit will be in Grand Rapids, Michigan. If it's anything like this past year, you don't want to miss this one. There will be resources, there will be panel discussions with partners from across the state. That is for K through 12 civics educators, and that is in partnership with the My Civics Coalition, of whom we are a member, as well as the MCCE, led by Ellen Schwarenstein, is also a member. It's just a fantastic day of learning. Like I said, really, you don't want to miss any of these. But we've got a little bit of something here for everybody. We've got something for secondary civics educators, for all K through 12 social studies educators, and then also all K through 12 civics educators. So really, really exciting stuff coming up down the pipe. Also, we would love to hear from you. We love new friends. So please stay in touch with us. We have all of the usual social accounts. We've got Facebook at LBH Levin Center. We've got Instagram at LBH_Levin Center, Twitter, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, which is now X, at LBH_Levin Center. Also, levincenter.org is our main website. You can take a look at the other exciting things the center is doing. We also have an Oversight Matters podcast hosted by my colleagues, Ben and Kyle. They go into various different oversight matters in the states. It's quite fascinating to listen to. So if you want to keep in touch with us and you want to keep up to date on things, that bit.ly and QR code is definitely for you. I'm going to move it to the next slide, but don't worry, that bit.ly and QR code is not going away. It's just moving a little bit, so you can continue to scan that if you'd like to. But at this point, myself and Lauren would love to open it up to questions, comments, concerns from all of you. Like I said, we love making new friends.
Just one point of clarification too, before we do jump into some questions. Like Ellen pointed out in the chat, but if you weren't all following, that might have been a mistake on my end. That event, Ellen, who is from the Michigan Center for Civic Ed, is one of the people that is co-hosting that event on the 26th with us in Pontiac. And she did clarify that that event is K through 12, not just secondary. That might have been a more recent change. But that's going to be some really exciting material. If you haven't yet, yeah, thanks, Helen. If you haven't yet checked out that My Voice, My Vote toolkit that's been put together, there are some really exciting K through 12 resources there that are going to help us collectively tackle teaching this election, talking about voting, talking about confidence in our election process. All of those things at age-appropriate levels is in that toolkit. There was one question in the chat that I will answer out loud too for the sake of the recording, and if people aren't following along there, is that these resources are focused and aligned with secondary social studies content standards, really particularly focused on both U.S. history and U.S. civics, that we're going to have lessons that are aligned to both. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a place in K through 8, but those are that is our focus, and that is the current alignment. I think that there are lots of opportunities for how this simulation and the format might work in younger grades, and we'd be happy to have that conversation with you and work with you to develop that. Are there any other questions about the work that we do, the content that we've got, anything else that you'd like us to give you like a sneak peek of?
This is always the awkward part of online teaching or learning, where everyone sits and stares at the comment section.
That's okay. We just did such a comprehensive job that there just aren't questions, which I love. Like Mark has said a couple times, we want you to consider us kind of an extension of your current department, that if there are problems that you need solved, or you think that there's kind of a way forward with maybe some of this content, but you don't have the time and capacity to make lesson plans about it, that's what Mark and I are here for. And so we're really excited to partner with new districts and partner with new classrooms and see the ways that this can work for some of your students. And we want to stay in touch. So please join our newsletter. That's going to be the best way to stay up to date with information from us. And then, Mark, I don't know if you want to flip all the way back to like our email addresses. You can also reach out to us directly and get in contact with us that way. Oh, this is going to be a lot of flipping. Sorry. That was my fault. So you can also feel free to reach out to us directly, but we really appreciate your time and attention. And we know that there's a lot on your plate here as you start a new school year. And so we love that you spent some time with us.
Well, gang, Mark said Levin Center loves to make new friends, and so does MCSS. So we love calling the Levin Center our new friends as well. And we want to thank Mark and Lauren for presenting this session for us tonight. and to you all for your time and attention today. So MCSS is a thriving organization because of all the partnerships that we have made with other entities around the state that are showing up and doing the work. There's several in the participant list tonight, like Ellen. I end up at so many meetings with Ellen. We love Ellen and everything that Center for Civic Ed does. And we had Mary here, who's on our MCSS board, but also works with Michigan Youth in Government. So just really, really want to thank Lauren and Mark again for doing this and getting it together. And if there are other questions, we can keep things open for a little while longer. But thank you everyone for your time and attention tonight.